Is the Kymco X-Town 125 a bit of a hidden gem in the maxi scooter world? This 125cc machine is £3,800. It's got a 15 brake horsepower motor, and I think it could well be a bit of a secret icon in the 125 maxi space. It doesn't quite have as much tech and gadgetry as some of the rivals, but I think this one could well surprise you. So if you're spending £3,799, which is what this will retail for, what do you get for your money? Where's that money going? And what sort of features do you get? Well, overall, the style, in my opinion, is pretty immaculate. It's nice and sharp and angled. It's a really nicely painted and coloured scooter. Get it in this sleek satin silver finish. And I believe as well you get a sort of black finish as well. In my mind, that places it as quite the sort of premium maxi territory where someone who's maybe commuting into their office building would want to rock up on one of these. Overall, in my opinion, as I say, the style, pretty much spot on. It looks really, really nice. Disc brakes front and rear, it's a combined braking system on those. The screen here is standard fit. You can get a larger screen, which is from Givy, and that will basically just extend it to be the standard commuter scooter that you see with the really tall screens. And at the rear here, you see a bit of a rack. You can also get a rear top box, which is from Shab. And overall, that would make it quite the commuter in terms of the spec that you get here. Moving away from that, your dash is analog. You've got an LCD inlay display, but you've got basically trip A, trip B, odometer, ambient temperature, which is quite nice, the battery voltage, the temperature of the oil, because it's a liquid-cooled machine, and you've got your fuel gauge. You don't get range remaining or anything like that, and you can't pay your smartphone. Outside of that, if you move here, you open your little compartment to the left, and you've got a USB socket in there as well, which is always quite nice if you're charging your phone on the go or just some sort of device that you want to charge. Moving back here towards the rear compartment, this opens with the key, and you get a nice little sort of boot device thing that slowly extends it and holds it open. You get a light in here, there's no USB sockets, and you can fit 2 full face helmets if they're like the medium shell. First one in, nice and gently. Give it a little squeeze. And you've got some padding at the top so that you don't scratch your helmet. Showy in here. And there's still a little bit of space here as well, which is always nice. My one point as well is that this is a bit of a pain to shut. Not any bad thing at all. This scooter was delivered with literally 0 miles on as well, so that will no doubt loosen up over time of opening and shut it, but you really have to push down to shut it, so just be aware of that. Fuel tank size is 12 litres, and when the fuel gauge was flashing at me, that had about 2 litres in there, so I filled up with 10 and a bit litres. So be aware of that, because when you get down to the flashing gauge, you know you've probably got to go to the fuel station as soon as possible. Maybe you get about 20 miles roughly, but you'd be pushing it, and I wouldn't want to risk it at all. Moving away from that as well, the seat. This is quite a nice seat. It's a nice leather material. This is really grippy, so when you're braking and you're really pushing on the brakes, you don't feel like you're going to fall forwards. But for me, as a taller rider, as you saw at the opening shot, as it were, when I was sat here, I was a bit like, oh, this is going to be a bit close to my knees. And when I was riding around, I did certainly feel that as well. I certainly fit on the scooter, but this hump is pretty set and you don't really have much room for movement. So you sit in the seat and that's all she wrote really. Now for me as a taller rider, I'm 6'3" for reference. If I was to sit here on this hump, it's perfect. And my thought is that this is such a large pillion space. Why would this not extend past the hump? Why would it not be a flatter seat? Now I did think about this, and when I looked into the boot, there's a little hump there which coincides with this hump. So then that will mean you can fit a helmet underneath the seat. So in my eyes, do you sacrifice your comfort as a rider, or do you want to have more storage space? They've basically just gone for the storage space, which makes sense as a maxi scooter. So a major selling point on the Kymco X-Town 125 is the engine. It's of course liquid cooled, it's got 4 valves, and it's got 15 brake horsepower from that single cylinder. Very impressive off the line, I've got to say. 11.6 Newton meters of torque. And I found that 0 to 20 is very, very, very impressive. 0 to 30, pretty good. 0 to 40, reasonable. It's just when you get from 40 to around about the top speed with me on it on a flat surface, which is about 65 miles per hour. Brett had a go on this as well, and he's 5'6", so he's a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, and he got it to around an indicated 70 on the display. So this motor is very, very impressive indeed. Now take into consideration as well the fact that this bike is 185 kilograms dry, so with fully fueled 12-litre tank and the oils and all this stuff, you're adding up to probably around about 200 kilograms. But this motor doesn't struggle whatsoever. Peak power comes in at around about 9,000 revs, and the peak torque is around about 7,000 revs. And when you're floating at around 60 miles per hour, it's sort of in the middle of the two. It's like 7,500 to 8,000 revs. Now that does mean that you can take this scooter out and about away from town and ride on the country roads and sort of even dual carriageway if you're happy floating fully tucked, fully pinned on your inside lane. But knowing that this scooter can do it is a very good selling point in my eyes. And this motor could be the star of the show for the X-Town 125. Now this scooter weighs 185 kilograms dry, so it's very important for a scooter like this to have adequate suspension. So at the front you've got telescopic forks, at the rear you've got a twin shock setup, and you've also got, of course, the swing arm that absorbs some of the bounces. You can also adjust by 5 steps the rear spring. So if you're carrying a pillion, you've got your full license, or you've got a heavy load on there, or maybe you're a delivery rider and you're riding around, setting the preload might be quite important to make sure that on the road, the scooter is not bumping around too much at all. But I have no complaints about the suspension whatsoever. Over bigger speed bumps, there's a notorious road here locally that has some pretty big speed bumps. I was able to glide over those at 30 miles an hour, no problem whatsoever, so that's always nice. The only fault I can really find with the suspension is over the sort of sudden bumps, like little holes in the road and divots that you can't avoid. It feels like the scooter does really absorb those, but suddenly, you know. If you're going over a gentle bump, it will happily cruise over those. Elsewhere, whilst we're here, you might as well talk about the braking system. So you've got a 280mm disc brake at the front and a 260mm disc at the rear. They're combined braking system, so when you put the rear on, a little bit of the front comes on as well. I was a little bit wary when I saw that it's a combined braking system. Of course, naturally, a combined braking system is cheaper than an ABS system, but it really did the job nicely. When you engage the brakes a little bit to start with, particularly the front, it's really soft and gentle. But once you've got the brakes engaged a little bit and you give them a really good firm squeeze to slow down maybe from 60 to 40, the brakes do an absolutely incredible job. In ideal conditions, you can slow down from 60 to 40 in no time whatsoever, as long as you've loaded the brakes adequately. Whilst we're here as well, might as well be talking about the size of the wheels. You've got a 14-inch front wheel and a 13-inch rear wheel, and that really adds to the stability of the bike. Now, as I say, the weight of this is reasonably high, but the weight is held quite low in the scooter, and because of the size of the tyres and the suspension, overall the handling is impeccable. With the power of the motor as well, it actually is a lot of fun scooting around town, especially in the sort of 20 to 30 limits when you can happily get there nice and quick and off the line if you're trying to look to win the red light Grand Prix. Of course, I've ridden quite a few scooters in my time, and sometimes off the line they can be a little bit wanting. Twist the throttle and you just don't really feel like there's that sudden urge to get going. But on this one, the throttle response is great and off you go.
Now, when the time comes and you need insurance for your motorcycle or scooter, make sure to get a quote directly with Lexham Insurance by clicking the link in the top right-hand corner. With over 22 years of experience and providing scooter and motorcycle insurance, there are several exclusive schemes that can be found at Lexham, and you could well find the right insurance policy for you. You can get a quote ready for when you pick up your new 2024 scooter, or give them a try when your insurance renewal comes up. Back on with the show.
So you join me at the front of the scooter now, and the X-Town 125, I think this is where it really shines bright. You've got integrated indicators, and you've got LED lights. You've got a daytime running light, which I think is particularly nice, and a really sleek design to it all. I mean, it's nice and angular, and it extends out. The windscreen here has got a bit of a lip to it as well, so if you duck in quite close to the windscreen from my big head, you feel the wind going over you. Other than that, it does sort of create a bit of a buffeting zone. But overall, the entire front of the scooter feels like it really separates the wind around you. So if you tuck your legs in, tuck your head in, feel basically no disturbance at all, which is quite nice. Now, I did promise that the daytime running lights are quite nice, and I think you'll agree, they do look very smart indeed. If I can indicate from here as well, you can hear that the indicator has an audible noise that plays to remind you that you've got your indicators on, which I think is a nice touch. Not all scooters have it, don't know why not, but it's a very nice touch for this to have it indeed. So the center stand on this scooter does come as standard, which is very nice. I did notice it's a very easy center stand to put up and down. Now you can put this off the ground for the rear wheel if you want to. And of course, when it's parked up, you can put it on the center stand. You can then happily sit on the scooter if you want to as well. There is a side stand, naturally. The mirrors here, you look at them and think they're quite stubby and short, but they are actually very good. They've got a lot of movement and angle to them. You can really just get them exactly where you need them. So I instantly thought when I jump on this, my shoulders are going to be all I can see in the mirrors. But in fact, I was wrong. You can see quite nicely out of these, which makes it a very big plus. Now, one of the other bits on this Kymco X-Town 125, and of course you could consider that against the pricing at £3,799, is that it's quite shy on tech. Now, whether or not you consider that a good or bad thing, I'll leave up to you. But the Kymco doesn't really excel in the tech department at all. I know Kymco have it, so in my mind, they've done the limitations on tech purely to keep the price nice and low and keep it as a very good alternative against the other rivals on the market. For instance, it's not keyless, so you've got a main key on there. Not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't have ABS, it's got a combined braking system. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. There's no start-stop motor on this one either, and you could say that that is potentially a bad thing because, of course, start-stop motor in town when you're waiting at a traffic light, no one switches off their scooter to start it up again. Instead, you just sit there with it running. This one doesn't have it. Whether or not you think that's a bad thing is up to you. Elsewhere, in terms of the tech on the dashboard, there's no smartphone integration. The dash is pretty limited as far as what you can see on there and what information it provides you. Some of the latest scooters, so the X-Max, Tech Max from Yamaha, that's a pretty much sort of worlds away in terms of the technology department, Tech Max being the clue. So that really leads me to the point, how much tech do you really need for your scooter? If you're just commuting to and from work and you're just running yourself to the shops at lunchtime or whatever, do you need to pay a smartphone? Do you need to have ABS if you're just riding in town? Do you need to have start-stop tech? Probably not. Price-wise as well, £3,800. When you look at the Tech Max, that's basically what, 5,500, 5,800 maybe? It's a little bit more. So you're saving potentially £2,000 from the top of the line scooter. And you get a very nice looking scooter that does everything you want. So is this the best 125cc maxi scooter on the market? Is it the hidden gem that I think it is? In terms of price and in terms of what you get for your money, 15 brake horsepower, I think this is a real hidden gem. Of course, you're gonna have to consider whether the Kymco dealerships are there and if you can buy one of these locally. But if you can, I think this is well worth a look. So comment down below if you think that this is the hidden gem that I think it is, or if I've just been fooled by 15 brake horsepower. In any case, like the video, subscribe to Bike Matters to stay up to date with what we've got going on here and what we've got coming up for 2024, because this is the first bike that we've had in this year. You can also have a look at the top 10 125cc maxi scooter video that I've recently just released, so you can see what 9 rivals this X-Town 125 goes up against. In any case, see you on the roads and ciao.